All right, welcome back to another episode of Blown Coverage. I am Mike Bell with my host Caleb Schwaryer. Caleb, much like last weekend, we have a really good slate of games this week, and I'm really looking forward to it. But before we get into the games, I want to talk about something that I didn't prepare you for at all, and that is the Kirk Signetti news. He
Oh,
just
yeah, very
signed
much.
an 8-year
Yes.
contract with Indiana. Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
Smart move by them. Very smart move. When I saw that, I was like, okay, very smart move because I don't know that Penn State job. I think Indiana knows, like, dang, that's pretty enticing. Same conference, just probably more resources in a sense. So
Yeah,
smart move.
agreed, agreed. I don't have too much to say about it other than, yeah, smart move for Indiana. And I think this is good just for the Big Ten in general because you've added like another school that's going to kind of remain or should remain as a pretty good team. And otherwise, I think there'd be a drop off for Indiana and they'd kind of go back to being nothing most likely
Mediocre.
after
Yeah.
Signetti. So, um, last point before we get into the games. Uh, the favorite to land James Franklin is Arkansas. And I think that it's a very intriguing place for him to go. He's been a guy who's turned programs around, Vanderbilt
Both.
and
Yeah. And
yeah,
then Penn
yeah, yeah.
State. Yeah.
So anyway, I just think that's fascinating. Keep an eye on that. Um,
Earlier this week, while we're kind of discussing this kind of stuff, I saw that someone linked to the Penn State job. Now, I don't know if he would do it or not. It would be, oh my gosh, freaking forgot his name. Marcus Freeman for Notre Dame.
yes.
I saw that and I was like, dude, I mean, I don't know if he would leave Notre Dame. And I think that'd be like a very top, like there would be probably minimal differences. I'd probably say the main difference is just what kind of athletes he could get at Penn State versus Notre Dame, just because the academic side of it. But man, if Penn State were able to get Marcus Freeman, I think that'd be a really.
It would be. It would be. I would be curious to see if he would leave as well.
I'd kind of
Um,
be surprised, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. Like you don't see. Oh, it's not like it's a big upgrade. Like they're both
Yeah,
pretty highly touted. If anything, maybe Notre Dame a bit more. So, but who knows? Maybe Marcus Freeman just isn't happy. But it's probably one of those things, like with the agents, just throwing names out there to see like
yeah.
who's interested, that kind of thing. But it's going to be a fascinating job to watch. But let's get into this week's slate of games. We've got some great ones. I always like to start where game day is. It's a top 10 clash. It's Ole Miss, who's the fifth ranked team in the country, versus Georgia, the 10th ranked team in the country. This is at 2:30 on ABC. As of now, Georgia is a 7.5 point favorite. Ole Miss is chasing their first SEC title shot since 2014, and Georgia, of course, trying to stay alive in the playoff race. And they really need to, win these games. They still have some somewhat tough tests coming up on the Georgia side of it. But yeah, what are your opening thoughts for this game?
I think it's going to be an interesting matchup just because I don't necessarily. I think Georgia's offense does enough to like get by, but in this kind of game, Ole Miss's offense, and I know they just kind of had an off week with Washington State last weekend, but I don't really put too much stock into it. I think Ole Miss's offense is going to kind of make it hard for Georgia to keep pace with them. Georgia's defense is still like really good. It's not like one of those like elite Georgia defenses that we're kind of used to in the last couple years, but they're still really good. I'm just kind of curious how they can hold up against Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin's play calling. Ole Miss's defense is, I don't know, I guess you could say somewhere around middle of the pack, so Georgia's probably going to have some opportunities. I think key thing is going to be just the third down. Um, Georgia's 84 and 84th in defense and Ole Miss is 17th in the nation on conversions on third down. So, in other words, Ole Miss is really good at converting the third down, whereas Georgia's defense is allowing the team to convert uh, pretty regularly, and that's not necessarily the best thing. um, so, penalties is another thing. Ole Miss is horrible with penalties. Georgia's not. I mean, Georgia's, I don't know, slightly above average, I guess, in that regard. Ole Miss is 58th in red zone offense. Georgia's defense is ranked fifth. So that's very good because what does it boil down to? The points on the board. So I'll be interested to see like how Ole Miss does in the red zone. Now their quarterback Chambliss, very good dual threat. He'll be able to, I don't know, he may be able to kind of make it more complicated for Kirby's defense to really keep Ole Miss out of the end zone. I don't think they'll do that because it's just kind of impossible to keep Ole Miss out of the end zone. I think it'll boil down to time of possession at the end of the day. Um, Ole Miss is actually not the best at time of possession, but that's just because they're a pretty explosive offense. Whereas Georgia's kind of more like steady pound and ground kind of thing. They're 19th in the nation. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I think it's going to be a great game. Just curious how I think the matchup to watch here is going to be Georgia defensive line, Ole Miss offensive line. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think of all the games we're going to discuss today in terms of the big games, I think this has the best potential to be the best actual game in
It could
terms
go
of,
any direction or a lot of directions.
yeah, well, yeah, in terms of watchability, something that I forgot about completely is that this is a revenge game for Georgia. Ole Miss beat Georgia last year, 28-17, which I just
That's
completely
right.
forgot.
I forgot because the Ole Miss's downfall towards the not downfall, but their little slump towards the end. So it kind of made you forget about that, I guess.
Sure. And I think this is kind of a referendum game on Ole Miss because are they overrated? Are they not? Their only win, uh, I'm sorry, their only big win that you can point to so far is LSU. They should be given credit for that, but I think LSU is no longer looked at the way they were when Ole Miss beat them. Now, time will tell if that's true. I mean, a lot can happen. But Ole Miss, they're undefeated. Are they an elite squad? I would not say they are yet they're ranked the fifth team in the nation. So they've got to prove that they are that, top of the SEC team, and they have an opportunity to do that here. The problem is, where they're playing and who they're playing against a team that already has a loss. And if Georgia loses, they're out of the SEC title race, most likely. I mean, two losses in the SEC is probably not going to get you to the SEC title game. It could happen, but I think it's very unlikely. I also think this is going to be a high scoring game for the reasons that you were kind of mentioning. I think both defenses haven't been the best. And what's interesting about Georgia is they've had they haven't been good at rushing the passer this season. They've been very bad, and that's kind of Ole Miss's game is to pass the ball. So I'm curious to see if Georgia can create any sort of a pass rush. They're bottom 15 in the league in that area. Then on the other side of the ball, it's kind of the opposite because Georgia offensively likes to run the ball, also, as you were saying. Well, guess who's outside of the top 100 in defending the run? That would
Yeah,
be Ole Miss. So, for that reason, I don't really see either defense getting a lot of stops. Georgia's like the team that just can't die. They just seem to always find ways to win games. They
goes back
did
to the
Tennessee,
coaching.
Auburn. Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's a culture that just expects to win. They don't
Yeah,
panic. So, there's going to be a lot of talk about Georgia if they lose this game. But there's going to be a lot of talk about Ole Miss if they can win this game.
oh yeah,
So this is just an interesting little stat I wanted to bring out, and that is the average depth of target for Gunnar Stockton is 6.8 yards. So he does not throw the ball deep. They keep
yeah.
it pretty close.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting to see if like Ole Miss could maybe take advantage of that, or if any team could take advantage of that, and they can maybe load the box a little bit more, defend the run. Just load the box up with 8 guys or something, or 7 guys,
Yeah.
and just see where you can go with that. Yeah, I'm not sure Stockton has been a proven passer yet,
Yeah. And
so
that's,
that's the game
yeah.
interesting. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
And if Georgia can't like have an explosive play down the field, it's just going to make it easier for Ole Miss's defense to kind of shrink. And I swear, like every week, I see them just do a lot of like side passes out to Branch, and it's not necessarily a screen per se, but it's just kind of it's more so like a further along handoff. It's kind of like an
Yeah.
extended run play for all intents and purposes. They do that a lot because, like you're saying, they don't really have. I guess they don't necessarily have anybody that can take the top off the defense, and so it's making Gunnar Stockton's like yards per attempt very low, which in turn even makes a mediocre defense makes it easier on them to stop it or stop what passing game they do have, and also kind of helps the run game and make the offense more one dimensional. So it'll be interesting to see what Georgia's offensive coordinator can do from that perspective.
Mhm.
Um, but I could see it going several different ways.
For sure. Yeah, I will tell you, and don't steal my pick, but I will tell you, I think Ole Miss is going to cover the 7.5 point line. I think it is going to be a close game, and I'll be surprised if Georgia just runs away with this again. Both teams' offensive strengths match the opposing defense's weaknesses,
Yeah, right.
so I'm very excited for this game here.
I think another aspect of it too is just like they maybe had a gut check last weekend against Washington State. Like I know they still won, but it was pretty close, and it came down almost to the wire, and maybe that was enough of a gut check to say, "Oh crap, okay, we've got to do better because we've got Georgia this upcoming week." So I'll be interested to see how Ole Miss starts out the game, and just I don't know. I'm interested to see because depending on this result, you can kind of see what the culture is for this team specifically under Lane Kiffin. So anyway,
Agreed. Agreed. Okay, so let's move on now. I actually want to immediately get into the game that we were talking about a little before we started, and that is USC versus Notre Dame. This is 6:30 night game on NBC. Notre Dame's favored by 9.5, which you told me before that you think this could be, a great game. Well, that's interesting because the odds makers think like, well, maybe not because that's a pretty big line. So, tell me what you're looking for in this game. Why did this game catch your eye?
well, just because like the statement you made just a few seconds ago, like basically, it's almost like USC top tier offense. I'd probably just put Notre Dame's offense just a smidge behind them. Okay. But both defenses are almost identical. And their worst stat, like for both teams, the worst stat is defending against the pass. Okay. Both quarterbacks are very good. So that to me, it almost just makes it seem like there's a potential for just a back and forth game, really and truly. Who's going to make a horrible turnover and who's going to win? So who's going to win the turnover battle? Who's going to be able to have somewhat a run game to at least slow down the other team's offense? So the run game is going to be pretty good or a big thing in this game, I feel like. And both defenses are kind of around the middle of the pack as far as run defense goes. So, but I guess what it boils down to for me, and kind of we touched on this with the Georgia and Ole Miss matchup. I was saying the coaching at Georgia is just there's no other coaching staff like it. I think in some regards, I'm very high on Marcus Freeman and what he's done at Notre Dame to this point. So do I trust Marcus Freeman more or Lincoln Riley? Probably Marcus Freeman. However, I think there's a lot of stake for both coaches. Okay, in this sense, like so, if Notre Dame loses, they're really just out of even the playoff race. Okay, and it does kind of suck just because the kind of schedule they've had. but they'll be out. Okay. USC, they're kind of getting some recognition. Lincoln Riley, we've kind of talked about it in weeks past. What has he done at USC that's been, memorable? Not really too much. Okay. So if he goes out there and loses this game, they'll be 5-2. And then it's going to be just some noise is going to get a little louder for Lincoln Riley, I feel like. So it'll be an interesting game. I see it being a high scoring game, but if one team is able to really just run and beat down the other team's defense, I mean, whoever can do that, I think will win the game. Just because you got to slow down the opposing team's offense to have a chance at this. So,
Yeah. So I said the last game is biggest in terms of the. Well, I didn't say biggest. It could be the best in terms of the actual game we watch, but this is the biggest game in terms of implications,
hmm
in my opinion, for the reasons that you just laid out. But according to the All-State Playoff Predictor, whatever you think of that predictor, but it's got to be kind of like ESPN's, whatever. They're all probably the same, probably pretty accurate. If Notre Dame wins, USC just has a 17% chance to get into the playoffs. They've got at Nebraska, at Oregon left. They're not getting into the playoffs if they lose this game. Notre Dame, if they win, it's just 34%, even in a win. Keep in mind, they already have two losses. They have to run a table.
yeah,
I'm surprised the number is actually that low because I think they're going to get in.
yeah, I know, me too. They're 13 now, and I want to say USC's like,
20.
yeah, that is
Here's
super odd.
here's the deal with that. Even if Notre Dame runs the table, I think the reason the number is so low, and I still think it's too low, is because
Conference,
they're exactly. So there could be chaos elsewhere, and these teams get in, and then Notre Dame's kind of that odd team out. I hope that doesn't happen because I think Notre Dame's legit. They're going to have a chance to prove it. But if USC wins, USC jumps up to a 59% chance to make the playoff. Notre Dame 0.3%. So they're not getting it, if they lose. So there's a lot on the line this game. What you were talking about with Lincoln Riley, I found this interesting, and this is why I don't think his job's on the line almost no matter what happens this year. They've got the number one recruiting class for next year. So I think that buys him time for at least one more year. They're not going to get rid of Riley. And I get that. You don't want to risk losing that class, see what he can do. But as
we'll
far
see if
as the
he's able to
game,
retain them. Yeah.
well, yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere though. But as
Well,
far as
yeah. I mean, I don't. I'm just saying there's going to be some chatter about it. I don't necessarily think he's going to get fired by any means. I just think there's going to be chatter, and there's already
yes,
kind of some of that coming into this year. If he were to lose, I just think it would get a little louder. Not necessarily saying he would get fired, but
I agree. It's going to get louder for not this season, but next season. It's going to make it
yeah,
more so like, hey, man, we know you're probably not going to get it done now, but you now have to get it done next season.
it's an
If
interesting spot to be because we're kind of seeing, which some of Franklin's top recruits have already decommitted. Like a 5-star running back that he had committed for next year's class has already decommitted.
mhm.
And so it's like if Lincoln Riley is able to retain all the players and stuff for this upcoming recruiting class, USC they got to know like, hey man, if we let him go, our number one recruiting class, which it's been a long time since they've had that, a lot of them are probably going to ditch and go into the portal, and it's going to make kind of, and that's the thing we kind of touched on this like when was this a week ago or whatever. When you fire a coach, it's arguably going to make it hard, like it's the hardest time. There are the most consequences to firing your coach, like more than ever now, I feel like, just because it's so
Yeah.
easy for the players to leave. Whereas before, like, yes, it's still crappy because the players are stuck, but you had them still more so
Yeah.
then than now.
Yeah. Another note on this game, you were just talking about the running games. Um, the last I saw, and I think this is it's just confirmed, but their running back is going to be out for this game. USC's starting running back. and that is a big part of their offense. They need to be able to run the ball.
Right.
So that's
And that's
pretty
something
big.
people don't really realize about Lincoln Riley. When he was at OU, and we had to play against his offense every year, and for the most part, he maybe bit him twice, but I mean, only off the top of my head, I can only think of once. But people always think about all the quarterbacks he's coached, but every year he's got a great running back, and I think a couple of his running backs last couple of years they've had kind of some injury issues, but every year at OU, great running backs, great running game, and that was the base of his offense.
Yeah. One more note about this game and the rivalry. This game is not on the schedule for 2026.
Really?
This may be the
Hmm.
last time these two teams play for a while, which is a
That-
shame.
yeah, it
They're
is.
playing every year.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So more reason I think these two teams will come out motivated.
Historical, man. It's just, oh man. I would say you got to put it near maybe not the top, but top six probably, just from a
Yeah,
historical purpose. It's I don't like
agreed.
that.
So as far as kind of I guess the matchup itself, as you were saying, both defenses have kind of they've been very bad. And I think USC has a little bit of shine on them right now in terms of the whole team, but maybe that defense a little bit too because of what happened with Michigan last week. The problem with that is this Notre Dame team is not Michigan. Notre
Yeah.
Dame can pass the ball and they can run the ball as good as anybody in the country.
Yep.
And this is what I think of Notre Dame, and I hope they get into the playoff because I was really thinking about who matches up best with Ohio State. And I actually think it may be Notre Dame because think about how good that defense has been for Ohio State versus how good this offense has been for Notre Dame. Nobody has stopped Notre Dame's offense, so I think that would be a great matchup. Um, so I say that just to say how much I think of this Notre Dame team. They've got to take care of business, but this could be a great game if it's a shootout. I could also see the case where Notre Dame just goes down the field, over and over, is not stopped, and then Notre Dame's defense makes just enough plays on the defensive side of the ball. If you look at their rankings, they're not very good, but if you look at the way they've performed these past 3 weeks specifically, it looks like maybe they've cleaned it up a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. And I do think that is kind of what's going to happen in this game. I don't think USC is going to be able to stop Notre Dame. Another note, uh, Lincoln Riley, even though this isn't technically a conference game, uh, when he's traveling into Big Ten territory, they are yet to win a Big Ten game on the road. Like I said, this isn't a Big Ten game, but it might as well be in terms of the actual travel.
It feels like one.
Been good on
Yeah.
the road. Yeah, they haven't been. So, all of that said, in a weird way, I wonder if this goes kind of how I thought Ohio State versus Illinois last week would go. Weird comparison, but I don't think that much of USC. Like I said, they've got the spotlight right now because they're USC and they're coming off of a good win, but now they're on the road, and I think Notre Dame is just legit. So, that's kind of what I have to say about the game.
Yeah, I would maybe just say we've both been really high on Notre Dame. I mean, you got to look at the schedules and the offenses that they have played up to this point. Miami, A&M, Arkansas, um, really
They're the only
good.
team to stop Arkansas, by the way. Arkansas
Yeah,
scored
right.
1
Which
second.
which we'll probably briefly talk about the game that you guys play against them, but up to this point, Arkansas's had that's the only thing good that they've had all year is their offense. It's really good. It's not an easy offense to stop. Okay, their quarterback is a very interesting player. So I think Notre Dame is more battle tested for sure, and I just trust in the coaching at the end of the day of Notre Dame versus USC. Because up to this point, Lincoln Riley, yes, I can rely on his offense pretty well, but his defense, I mean, it's just inconsistent.
hmm Now, if USC does find a way to pull out a win here, be ready because that's all anyone's going to want to talk about. And honestly,
Oh, I know.
rightfully so, if they do
Yeah,
win
I
this
know.
game.
USC is a blue blood, and ugh.
Yeah. USC, as we kind of mentioned at the beginning of this, they've still got a tough schedule, no matter
Yeah, they
what
do.
happens in this game. At Nebraska is not a give me, and then at Oregon.
Yeah.
For the sake of having good games, maybe I, in a weird way, would like USC to win because then there's some big
Just
matchups. But
makes more yeah, chaos or whatever, maybe. I don't know.
yeah, but then at the same time, I just love Notre Dame and what they've done. So I'm
Mhm.
fascinated to watch the game for sure.
That
Okay,
UCLA game that they play at the very end,
good point.
I think that could be a very because it's like a Texas A&M rivalry. You know, you got to throw everything out. It's pure emotion,
And
and
UCLA has figured something out. They've
yeah,
looked really good these past two
yeah.
weeks. So, yeah, that could be
It's
very
very
fun.
interesting. Really, at the end of this year, we'll just have to talk about that. I guess I am very interested to see how UCLA does just because of how much
Mhm.
they've lost, and now they've got it figured out and going. I don't know. It's kind of funny, I guess, but yeah, I don't think that'll be a gimme game for Lincoln Riley either.
For sure.
It's at
Uh,
home at least, but
yeah, yeah. Okay, so next game, we've got number 10 LSU versus number 17 Vanderbilt. Games on ABC. I did not write down what time, but I know it's at 11 a.m. Okay.
yeah, 11.
So Vanderbilt, they're off a bye and a
Mm-hmm.
loss to Alabama. LSU coming off a win at home against South Carolina. Maybe they didn't look the best, in my opinion, in many ways. I guess their defense still looked elite. Um, Vanderbilt's favored by 2.5 points in this game. What do you think of that?
Honestly, man, like I'm fine with it. So the reason why I say that is like what I have written down. Vandy's all around. They've been more consistent. Okay, now when they have more talent, okay, both sides of the ball for sure, undoubtedly so. But consistency on offense is a major issue. They haven't really been able to run the ball. Now, this past weekend, they were, okay, for the first time. Garrett Nussmeier, though, still very inconsistent. I think he threw 2 picks last week, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So they're not gelling very well on offense. Okay. Not to say that Vanderbilt is like USC's offense or, that Vandy's got one of the top defenses in the nation or anything by any means. But I think from a psychological standpoint, who is going to have more juice in this game? I think it's going to be Vanderbilt between the head coach and then Diego Pavia. Okay. Motivation is not a question for me for Vanderbilt in any game that they played this year. And really and truly, I think that up to this point, I think Vanderbilt's been a better team than LSU has. They've been consistent, and I know that the only loss that they've had this year is to Alabama, like you said, and then they had the bye week. And like we talked about that week, or that next week, the reaction to that game, it was 30-14, yes, but it was a much closer game than the scoreboard indicated.
Yep, yep.
Which we're both very high on Alabama. They're firing pretty much on all cylinders. Their only Achilles tendon is the run game, and they were able to hold Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt to really not rushing the ball, so they were able to do what they needed to do there. In other words, I think Vanderbilt 2.5 points. I'll take it. Don't steal that pick.
Yeah. Oh well, we'll see about that. We'll see about that. Um, yeah. To me, I think this is a good measuring stick game for both teams.
Hmm.
I don't
Hmm.
think either team is great, but I also don't think either team is bad. I think they're both kind of like hovering to that for SEC standards, good to very good range.
Yeah.
And I think this game is going to tell us a lot about both these teams. Here's an interesting thing. If I asked you who the better passer was, if I just asked the average fan who the better passer was, they would probably say Garrett Nussmeier. And maybe technically that's true, They both right now have 1,400 passing yards.
Yeah.
Nussmeier has 9 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. Pavia, 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So that's maybe not a stat that you would have guessed would have been the case,
Yeah.
but yet it is the case. And it's going to be very interesting because LSU likes to pass the ball and Vanderbilt likes to run the ball. LSU has been known to have struggles defensively against the quarterback run. I remember last year when they faced A&M, that was a major problem for them and against other teams whenever they had to go against Marcel Reed for the first time, and there were other teams that could run the ball. Now, granted, this year LSU has a much better defense. So they're probably going to do the Alabama strategy and just try to force Pavia to pass the ball. And also, this LSU team is elite when it comes to turning the ball over. And that is the one thing, because I agree with everything you're saying in terms of like motivation for Vanderbilt. They're awful by. And I just read the numbers for passing, but like, can he pass the ball without turning it over? Because that is going to be so key because you know LSU
Yeah.
is going to be ready for that run. And if Vanderbilt tries to be one dimensional, I just don't know if that's going to win them this game. So now on the other side of the ball, LSU's offense has really struggled, and I
Yeah.
would say this is kind of potentially a get right game for them because Vanderbilt really hasn't been good on defense, really all season against any opponent. And they're especially not good at defending the pass, which is what LSU wants to do. They have
That's
not
the
been better.
only thing they've really been able to do too.
Yes,
They're
exactly.
given the talent they have there, it's kind of surprising that LSU is just so one dimensional. But I mean, really and truly, they are.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know last week they started to try to run the ball a little bit more,
Mm,
but all season that's just not what they've done. That is something they're going to have to figure out if they want to go anywhere. They're going to have to balance that attack more because, I mean, Nussmeier, whether he's injured, whatever's going on, I think the top receiver is still hurt on the LSU side. So they're going to have to be able to do that. So far, they haven't. So I largely don't know what to expect in this game. I
yeah,
get why
it's hard.
Vanderbilt's favored. Nothing would really surprise me here. Like nothing would surprise me. So I will keep hidden my pick because I don't want you to steal it. But I'm very
I almost
excited.
have no choice now but to say what I said on here. So I mean, it doesn't matter now.
The thing is, Vanderbilt, they are at home, but let's face it, that's as Nick Saban said last
Yeah,
year,
yeah, right.
just not the biggest home field advantage. But at the end of the day, it is LSU on the road. They're having to travel, all that. Vanderbilt again off the bye. I think that's the biggest thing. Vanderbilt being off the bye, and they've been thinking about
Yeah.
that loss for 2 weeks. Vandy really needs to win this game because they have a tough schedule. Uh, LSU doesn't have the easy schedule either. But yeah, measuring stick game. I'm excited for it. Is there anything else you want to say on this one?
Uh, just to touch on the run game for LSU a little bit, injuries have been an issue. Caden Durham is their best running back, and he is actually really good. It's just he's been a little injured this year, which definitely can make it a little bit harder for you to have a consistent run game when your best running back is out. They kind of have some depth issues as well, which is kind of interesting. I mean, LSU and I don't know. You got to think like for 10 years, Les Miles, every year he had like one of the best running backs. And when's the last time you've heard of a great running back from LSU? Really? Maybe like 2020, Clyde Hilaire or whatever his name was with Joe Burrow or whatever. Anyway, just kind of an interesting little point there. Um, but that's really it. I could see this game going in a lot of different directions.
Yeah,
Last
I
thing,
would just say, as I was, well, I was just say, I would say if LSU can't do anything against Vanderbilt offensively, then I think their offense is just done. This is really,
yeah,
I think,
right,
their
yeah,
opportunity. By the way, that 2019 season, that was when they had Edwards Hilaire, however you say his name. But since
yeah.
then, I don't see
I can't
anyone
really
else.
think of a running back. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
off the top of my head. LSU's upcoming games too, by the way, man, very hard. Like it may even be two top five matchups: A&M and then Alabama, which Alabama's six. But for all intents and purposes, two top five matchup or two top five games. Very hard.
Yeah, well, and speaking of coaches that might be on the hot seat, I mean, LSU's fan base is downright like delusional. If you ever hear about their fan base, and I mean, like on one hand, I appreciate it because look, they've got diehard fans and all that. I get it, but they truly expect perfection, and they haven't been that happy with Brian Kelly. I would say, look, it's the SEC, all that, but Brian Kelly has not done anything at LSU
Which is
significant
very
yet.
surprising because when he got hired, I mean, who would have thought that LSU would still be kind of like the way it is, still kind of maybe around middle tier of the SEC, maybe not middle tier, but just right above it.
Yeah.
I would not have thought that. This is the most resources Brian Kelly's ever had. Anyway, very weird.
Yeah, the argument there is that he's always been a little overrated as a coach because, I mean, Notre Dame, let's face it, those schedules that he used to have were pretty easy. And then whenever he got to the big game, didn't really win them, but he was looked at as a pretty good coach. I don't know. I guess I was somewhere in between all that. I thought he was a great coach, but I didn't think he was an elite coach by any means. And now you're going to the SEC. That's tough. That's tough. So curious to see what the talking heads will say if he loses a couple more
Yeah,
games. Yeah.
maybe his
Okay.
next
So,
spot will be Penn State.
you know, I saw the rumor actually that he might. I don't see why he would ever do that, but I did see the
Yeah,
rumor.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know. LSU versus Penn State. I mean, it's like all day you got to go LSU. I mean, just no bias, but just think about like the recruiting aspect of it. In my opinion, I mean, you're just like right there in the deep South,
Hmm.
arguably the best players.
For sure. For sure. Okay. So last game of our kind of big four, and that is going to be number 11 Tennessee
Hmm.
versus number 6 Alabama at 6:30 on NBC. It's going to be fun flipping between this game and the Notre Dame game. This is another revenge game. Don't forget, Tennessee won this game last year, although Tennessee has not won at Alabama since 2003. And Tennessee is a field goal away from being undefeated this year. Don't forget, if that kicker makes that kick against Georgia, they are undefeated.
Yeah,
So, yeah, what are you thinking about this game?
that's been like a recent, like really good. I mean, it's always been a really good rivalry, but to this day, like I forgot what year it was, 2022 or whatever it was when Tennessee they were in Rocky Top, last second field goal kick or whatever, and they went through the goalpost in the river. Arguably, that's just one of the top football games of recent memory that always comes to my head when I think about college football. So I think here recently, this has been one of the best football games to watch. Like every year, I think. Of course, this being the second year without Saban, but um, I think what DeBoer and Heupel have going at each other, I think it's definitely one of the more interesting coaching matchups. Nuts and bolts of this matchup, I really think Alabama is just really good, and I think here's the deal: Josh Heupel likes to run the ball too. That's another misconception. Everybody always just sees the flashy passes, everything like that, but Josh Heupel uses the run game to set all that stuff up. And that's Alabama's Achilles tendon, right? So if Alabama is able to kind of somewhat control that Tennessee run game, I think it's going to be. I think the spread on this game is 11 and a half. If Alabama can somewhat
Six and a half.
huh?
Six and a half.
Oh, where the hell did I see 11 and a half? I don't know. If Alabama is able to some extent slow down the Tennessee run game, I'll take that because Tennessee, really good offense, really bad defense. Okay. And Tennessee, or not Tennessee, Alabama's got a really good offense. We're both very high on Ty Simpson. I would also put Alabama playing in Alabama. That's going to be a big factor as well. Really, just you have to like give a point to whoever has the home field advantage with both of those because they're two of the some of the best stadiums in the nation, but definitely in the SEC, especially at night. Which this game is 6:30 game for all intents and purposes, night game. So what will it come down to? Because really, it's two great offenses. Alabama's defense, middle tier, I'd probably say. Tennessee's defense, probably. Uh, how do you say this? Behind, middle of the pack, probably like 2/3 or whatever. So back in the 75 percentile or whatever you want to call that. And I don't know. I just like what I've seen from Alabama a little bit more than Tennessee. However, both teams have done very well up to this point. So it's not like there's too much separation as far as what they've done and accomplished. But um, I like Alabama's chances in this.
Yeah, Tennessee, weird to say, but Tennessee has won two of the last three against Alabama.
Yeah, that
So
is very
whoever's been at home has won the game the last 3 years. So yeah, weird to say. Now the thing is, Tennessee's kind of a weird team for me to figure out because they're first in the nation in points. They've got a great offense. Uh, Alabama, as you were saying, they have a great offense too, particularly passing the ball. But Tennessee on defense is, I think I see here, they're 106th in points allowed.
yeah.
That's not good.
We could
But
go
what's
out there
so,
and play.
what's that?
We could go out there and play for them.
Yes, agreed. Well, me, I don't know about you, but
Yeah,
here's the weird thing about their defense is they're bad everywhere except for getting after the passer. They're
yeah,
number
right.
one in the country in getting after the passer. So I'm just going to say it now. If they want to have a chance in this game, they're going to have to get after the passer. If they don't do that, I think they're
Let Ty
done.
Simpson
Yeah. Ty Simpson's going to
lead.
move the ball. He's going to move the ball. Here's the other thing I want to say. Alabama has been dominant in time of possession. I've mentioned it
Hmm.
every week for the past 2 weeks. They're
Yep.
seventh in the nation for time of possession. In the last three games, they're averaging 37 minutes a game for time of possession. That's impressive, but could that actually give Tennessee a chance in this game? Because what that is doing is keeping the score kind of close.
Yeah,
And
that's
if
true.
it's a one possession game, Tennessee has proven that they can go down the field and score. Alabama's got a great defense, so that's going to be a heck of a matchup. But I would imagine Tennessee's going to be able to score points. What do you got?
Uh, and I would agree with that. I think it's going to be hard for Alabama's defense to stop Tennessee's offense to some extent. I think the other aspect of the game too is, like you said, Alabama has great time of possession, but they're also second in the nation with turnover margin. I think it's +9
Mm,
or something. So in other
yep,
words, they are controlling the game pretty much on their terms, and they're not giving the other team many chances. So
yep,
that being said, like yes, you definitely do have a good point. Like if Alabama's main like keeping the score a little bit down because they're just like having these long drives, can that keep the score close? Yes. Alabama should be able to excel a little bit more than Tennessee could, as long as they don't turn the ball over and give Tennessee's volatile offense an extra possession per se.
yeah, yeah. Agreed. This is another one where, like, if you look at it, I agree with the spread of Alabama 6.5. Like, that's probably what I think, especially because Alabama keeps the ball so much that they're probably not going to win this game. Like something crazy, like 42-10. Like that's just not. It doesn't seem to be their game. My thing is like I don't know if it works like this. I would like to ask like somebody who used to play the game this question, but is there any chance Alabama is just exhausted yet? Because I mean they've been on like kind of this their own gauntlet. Georgia, and then they face the team that beat them last year, emotional game versus Vandy. Then they have to go to Missouri. That's a
Mhm.
battle. And then now you're hosting your rival Tennessee, who also beat you last year. And by the way, I don't know who's next week, but I know the next week is LSU. Like, is there? I've said like I don't think an SEC team is going to run the SEC table, but yet Alabama is a couple games away from kind of doing that. So where are they going to slip up? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why it would be here again at home. It seems like kind of a favorable matchup in some ways, but is there a chance they just come out flat? I don't know, but that is something I'd like to ask a former player. Like, hey, after you've been off this rough schedule, like, is there more of a potential for a letdown game? Maybe even, I know in basketball, NBA players have said one of the toughest games to play is actually the first game at home after a tough or after a long road stand. And the reason is because you just went to battle every day on the road and then you come back home and you get a little bit complacent. You're like, okay, I'm back home now. You're a little bit relaxed and then you get punched in the mouth. Is there anything to that kind of in football? I don't know. I don't know, but I'm
Surely
excited for
there
this.
is. I mean, you play so many of the. I mean, Alabama, man, I really need to go figure out what their strength of schedule is. But it's like at some point, it's a war of attrition, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you have a team that's going to go and play notable team, top tier team, almost every other week at least, like Alabama's done up to this point for the most part, there's going to be some wear and tear on the team, even mentally. It'd be hard for them to just have that laser edge focus each and every week. I think it takes a special kind of coach. And that's what made Nick Saban so legendary was just he was able to maintain that no matter what, no matter who they were playing. Expectations were never bigger than what Nick Saban's expectations were, you know. And I don't necessarily think like Nick or Kalen DeBoer like doesn't have that potential per se. Um, it's just a tough spot just because of the teams that Alabama have had to play. I mean, it's up there as far as one of the hardest for sure. Um, but if they
Yeah.
do come out with this, I think that is a pretty like that's going to be a great thing for Kalen DeBoer, just because at this point, like last year, I think this is kind of like around the time that their season started going downhill rather quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and just the trajectory. Like this team is definitely more consistent than what they were last year, but just because Ty Simpson has given them a consistent quarterback play versus Jalen Milrow, he could. I mean, man, he would you want him as your quarterback? Probably so. I mean, who wouldn't? He could run very well. He could throw that deep ball very well. It's just his short intermediate game was questionable, and it just made the passing aspect of it very inconsistent. So anyway, I
Well,
think it'd be
I guess just to finish up this game, Alabama, it's actually even a tougher schedule than I thought because
yeah, yeah.
next week they go to South Carolina. I don't think anything of South Carolina, but it's a team that's desperate, and it's one of those
Yep.
games. Alabama coming off a bunch of big games. Now you're at South Carolina. It's not going to be as talked about. Potential for a letdown game. Next game, host LSU. Coming off a bye though, I actually feel pretty good about them in that case. But then next game, OU. Next game, FCS opponent. Next game at Auburn, and that's a rivalry game. So like running the table there would be extremely impressive, but it just would not shock me if there's just a random letdown game. And
Which
didn't
really
they?
and truly, oh, go ahead.
What did they lose to OU last year? Am I thinking about? Is that Alabama?
I don't think Alabama. Well, did Alabama play OU
They
last
did
year?
play last year because it's the same opponents as last year. I
Surely
think.
they didn't. I mean, I find that very unlikely just because of how bad Oklahoma's offense was last year. I mean, I
Well, that's
think they
why I
were,
think it was such a shocker. I may have to like look at that real quick. Um,
yeah, honestly, I am
'Cause I
too.
remember OU won some big game last year versus Alabama. They did. They won 24-3.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Okay, that's interesting.
a
Huh.
lot of revenge spots for Alabama
Yeah, I
this
know. I
year.
was about to say, yeah. It's like every other game we're talking about up here is freaking revenge game. Here's what I would say, man. It's kind of crazy to think about it in this sense, but Georgia, Alabama. I would say that's a pretty good rivalry, correct? I mean, yes.
Yep.
Then Tennessee, another great rivalry in college football. Yes. LSU, another great rival. Yes. At
Mm.
or Auburn, great rival, arguably probably the most exciting rivalry, top three rivalry game every year for sure. It's crazy just how many like top tier rivalry games Alabama has, not only in this schedule but per year. I would say. And if Kalen DeBoer is able to get out of this season just having one loss, um, man, very impressive. Very impressive.
Yep. Agreed. Okay, so I think that covers our big four. Let's briefly maybe touch on some other games going on. The next big game in terms of like ranked matchup is going to be Utah versus BYU. I've been watching BYU every week because I've been hoping they're going to lose because
Right,
I've
you're
just
you're a huge hater. Look at this,
I
guys.
kind of
The hate
am, and
fuel.
they keep pulling off the win, and I don't know when it's going to stop because I'm convinced they're overrated. Utah supposed to be pretty good. I mean, the problem is both these teams. Utah faced Tech, they got destroyed. BYU hasn't faced anybody. Their best opponent was like probably last week against Arizona. They barely pulled it off. This it's rare that this game would have any spotlight at all because both these teams have not been. Well, Utah's been decent, but BYU hasn't. This time it's a top 25 matchup, and I have no idea what to expect. I know Utah is favored by 3.5. I could see BYU winning this game. Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to watch it because of the Big 12 implications. And like it's weird to rank these teams. If BYU keeps winning, are they going to find their way in the top 10 somehow just because of the chaos? And then what do you do? Because I don't know if they face Tech this year in the regular season. So are you going to have like multiple Big 12 teams now in the playoff? It's just another game that has a lot of weight to it, both because it's a rivalry, but it has actual playoff implications. And I'll be definitely watching this game. It'll be on my TV for sure.
I think has one of the most interesting rivalry names in college. I think it's called the Holy War.
Holy War, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, pretty interesting. Yeah, yeah, I pretty much agree with you for the most part on that. I think the matchup that um, I think the matchup that I'm looking forward to quite a bit, honestly. I'm really excited about the A&M Arkansas game, not just because it's your A&M people, but I always really just watch this game every year just because I think it's an interesting one. And yes, you guys typically do pull it out. I think it's going to be very interesting. Y'all's defense is very good. Yes, Arkansas's offense very good. Um, the only Achilles tendon on your team is Marcel Reed. I think he can do just enough passing the ball to get you guys by. The only thing I would be concerned about is which, yes, you have what's his name, Rubel, or is it Ruben Owens? Yeah,
Ruben
Ruben
Owens, yeah.
Owens. Yeah, Le'Veon Moss though got hurt, which could be a little detrimental to you guys. Well,
Big loss.
yeah, big loss. So we'll kind of see how your offense is without him. Now, I think Ruben Owens is a good running back. It's just you had two great running backs with what
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
why that was funny, but um, we'll see how you guys do. Many teams aren't able to stop Arkansas though, so I'd be like, if you guys are like, okay, I would say like, okay, A&M's defense definitely up there, very serious, like championship level defense. Um, I don't know, and it could be a prove it game too. You know what? I'll take that back necessarily. If Marcel Reed had a big game, I don't want to say I wouldn't think much of it per se, but it's like Arkansas's defense is just really bad. You know what I mean? But rivalry game, we could. Yeah, I don't know. It could be interesting, I guess.
I think A&M is going to score points because Arkansas, if you look at their defensive stuff, they're like 120th in every
Yeah.
category. Like
Right.
it's
Right.
crazy how bad they are. but then on the offensive side of the ball, they're great. So that is going to be a very interesting test for A&M's defense because the last time they faced an offense kind of like this was Notre Dame, and they
Yeah,
allowed
right.
40.
And it was a 40 to 41 point game. Yeah.
Right, right. So also first A&M road game in like over a month. First time we've been to Fayetteville in 15 years.
Hard place
Arkansas.
to play, probably underrated.
Yep, Bobby Petrino was the coach here 3 years ago. He knows some of these players, and that's a team that has been in every single game except the Notre Dame game. So yeah, I'm certainly not. I see that seven and a
Whether
half.
that be a good or a bad thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no. So I mean, I think this has the potential to be a shootout. I'm
Yeah.
praying our defense could show up and just make enough stops. I'm also going to be worried if A&M has any offensive issues because I haven't been the highest on their offense. If you can't move the ball on this defense, that is an issue. I think they're going to. Not even just because A&M. I just think Arkansas is just a
Yeah,
really
right.
bad defense.
Right.
So, and
How
here's
long
the other
go ahead.
just kind of last point on A&M. They're undefeated to this point, but now they've got 5 weeks away from Kyle Field before they play at Kyle Field again. Their
Oh,
road games,
wow. Wow.
right? They've got
Texas
three
has
straight.
been kind of yeah. Texas has been kind of in that. Well, like where I think we're in a 4 week stint of Texas not playing at home. So
Yeah, well, here's the deal: the three road game. Well, okay, the road games are at Arkansas, at LSU, then at Missouri. That's
yeah,
tough. So
very tough for sure.
if you lose this one, that's tough because now
Oh
you kind of got to be perfect. So this is the game you got to win. I expect to probably drop one of those, and then here's the deal: you get one more SEC home game, and then it's at Texas. So those road games, being as tough as they are, you got to take care of this one, and it's not going to be easy because Arkansas has been there with everybody. Funny enough, this is a weird thing to say, and we'll see after we watch LSU this week. I toughest place to play in the nation, especially for a night game, and it's going to be a night game, is at LSU. But strangely enough, like LSU's been so bad offensively, I almost feel more worried about Missouri and Arkansas than LSU. I know that's a bold statement. I know it's a bold statement, but I just think LSU can't move the ball. But that's
I
a
mean, Missouri
conversation.
almost took down Alabama last week, and that is with. I don't want to say their quarterback like played horribly. I don't think he did. He just turned the ball over twice,
Yeah.
and they only lost to 3 points. And really, they almost had a chance there at the end to even still tie it. So I think Missouri is. I think maybe we need to see them like really go toe to toe with another great opponent before I like say decide like whether or not they're really good or just kind of slightly above average or whatever. But
Well,
yeah, I would at
let's
least
talk.
say that Missouri's been more consistent than LSU has up to this point. And hey, our same thing with Arkansas. The
Yeah.
only team that stopped them is Notre Dame, like you're saying. Every other week, their offense has been great. Their defense has sucked horribly. There's not much variation.
Well, I guess briefly, let's talk about Missouri because they have Auburn this week, night game at Auburn. Auburn is
Sneaky
three
game.
and
Yeah.
three. They're 0-3 in the SEC. Missouri, it's weird that Missouri, if you just line these teams up evenly, you would think Missouri would be favored by more. Missouri is only favored by 1.5, but I get it because Auburn is probably still playing hard. That is one of the toughest places in the nation to play at night. In Missouri, look, it's different on the road. So if Missouri wants to prove kind of what you were just talking about, I think this is a big step for them.
Oh, for
And
sure.
honestly, they're on upset watch. They're on upset watch
Oh,
because
yeah. I think Auburn's really pissed about last weekend, too. You know,
and that defense is
yeah, their
turning
defense
into
has
me
been
versus
really
everyone
good.
they play very good, very
Oh,
good.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but okay. What other game would you like to maybe briefly get
I
into?
think I think an interesting game to watch is the Washington versus Michigan game too. Um, Michigan coming off the bad loss to USC. Washington, I'm actually not even sure who they played against, but I was very impressed with how they were able to come out and be very competitive with Ohio State. Which, okay, Not biased, but the only other team to really be competitive with Ohio State anyway was Texas the first game. So I thought that was pretty awesome of them to do that. Now Ohio State eventually pulled away, yes, but um, I would actually be curious to see who is favored in that game, Washington or Michigan.
Michigan is by 4.5.
Oh wow, actually, I kind of find that a little surprising.
It's at Michigan. Michigan coming off a loss. But I
Yeah,
agree. It is surprising to me too because I think a lot of Washington, and I'm not sure how much I think of Michigan. A lot of people think Washington should be ranked. I mean, they did kind of compete with Ohio State a bit,
yeah,
and they've looked good. And this is kind of their moment to make some noise. I mean, no one's talking about Washington. If they win this game, I think people will be talking about Washington a little bit how they're talking about USC now
yeah,
because after this, they host Illinois. That's a winnable game for them. They've got Oregon at the end of the year. If Washington can go through this schedule, they're kind of like a sleeper playoff team. All these games are winnable for them. So yeah, I'll be excited to watch this too. It'll probably be my first game like watching all of Washington, like the full game. So it also a big get right game for Michigan because is Michigan now just going to fall apart? And like we were
yeah,
talking about in
right,
our last episode, is there going to be noise around that job now?
right.
So this is a great game. I am excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I forgot the guy's name that's the head coach at Washington now. I want to say like Jeff Fish or something like that, but I'm probably wrong. But keep in mind, I think it was 2 years ago. He had Arizona like pretty good. I think they won 9 games, if I'm not mistaken. Which that's really hard to do at a school like Arizona. And he just had, I think he had a wide receiver that was like taken in the first round, Terry Mc, whatever his name was.
Jed Fish is his name, but yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I think Washington's got a good coach. It'll be interesting to see kind of where it goes. I think maybe the only other game, and I don't really have too much to say about it. Louisville versus Miami. I mean, I think it. I don't know. We'll kind of see how it goes, but it's two of the better teams in the ACC going at each other. Um, we'll see. I guess. I mean, not really much to say about it, but
Yeah, I think Louisville may be a little bit overrated. And I say
yeah,
that because I watched them play against Virginia last week, who I think Virginia's looked pretty good. But I expected more out of Louisville, and they just didn't look good. And now the only thing I'll say is Louisville has to win this game to have any shot at the ACC, any shot at the playoff. But at Miami, by the way, this is on a Friday. Miami favored by 13 and a half. And this is, by the way, Miami's last kind of real game. If you look at the
it was
rest of their
2 weeks
schedule,
ago. Oh, good.
what's that?
I thought you were about to
No,
say their last game was like 2 weeks ago.
no, but that is true. I forgot about that. They had like a weird
Miami's
schedule.
I,
They had like,
very odd to have two buys like that back to back.
yes,
I
yeah,
guess
yeah,
their last
very
their
strange.
last game for people that may not know was against Florida State on October 4th. So could
Yeah,
could that maybe there's always that debate of okay, is that too much time off? Is your team going to have to find their rhythm all over again, kind of thing, or in some cases it is really good because your team's injured and whatnot. But anyway, that maybe be the only reason why I'm like, ooh, okay, let's see how Miami comes out and fires.
yeah. They come out flat? But here's the deal. After this, I mean, their schedule is just so soft. Like, yeah, there's teams that like could occasionally give you a battle, like at Pittsburgh at the end of the year, but like you don't really expect that.
Maybe
So
Syracuse. I don't even know about
again, they're
Syracuse.
all kind of reaches, you know.
Yeah,
They're all
right.
kind of reaches. So the only thing I'll say is like it is a must-win game for Louisville. I don't expect this game to be close. Uh, there is another game though that I will be watching that I don't think is getting enough attention, and you didn't mention it. But I think it's one of the games of the week, and it's going to be very big for playoff implications, and that is Georgia Tech at Duke.
Oh
Both
yeah.
are both
How could I have
undefeated in the ACC. Duke is favored in this game by 1.5, which I thought was interesting. Georgia Tech's got to win this game. to get in the play. Well, you know what? Maybe that's not true. They don't have to win, but they really need to win. They have a super soft schedule. They got to go and run the table really to be in the ACC championship. Duke for sure has to win this game, or they'll be 4-3. If they win this game, they're in first place in the ACC. And yes, I did just say first place because they will have more wins technically than Miami. The point is that they will be the favorite to be in the title game with Miami, which is a weird thing to
The
say,
next week they play Clemson too, which I know Clemson's 3-3, but for
but
all
that's a
intents
dangerous.
and purposes, it's still a tough game. Dabo Sweeney, good athletes.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be insane? Who would have thought if Duke came out and win this? Whenever Duke and Clemson played, Duke would be at the very top. Clemson would be in the middle towards the bottom. Or yeah, the Clemson's pretty much right smack dab in the middle. Well, upper middle, yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, the way Georgia Tech plays, man, is they're impressive to watch. Yet it feels like they could just lose to anybody. But for the same
Well, it's
reasons,
just
like they could beat anybody.
they're so I want to say one dimensional. That's not necessarily the case. It's just their team is going to go as far as Haynes King stays healthy. If he stays healthy, their offense will be fine. If not, they're going to be in trouble because he's pretty much. I don't know. I just feel like he's a huge focal point on the team. I feel like he's almost their
Oh
entire
yeah,
offense.
he is.
And
He is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and he's putting up crazy numbers too. Honestly, like Um, last week we were kind of talking about some Heisman front runners, like Ty Simpson, Mendoza at Indiana, but I also think that Haynes King needs to be kind of in that conversation as far as Heisman goes. A lot of running yards every game, and a pretty good passing amount, or a good amount of passing yards for how much running he does.
Yeah, looking at these ACC standings, I think this conference could cause so much chaos in the playoffs because of the way these schedules are set up. We know Miami's going to be in there, barring some sort of disaster. But there's a very real chance that there's going to be a third team eyeing for the playoffs. And like, just keep in mind where these teams might be ranked. So if Georgia Tech runs the table, you're going to have them in Miami. Do you keep Georgia Tech if they run the table? Granted, they have Georgia at the end of the year, but even if they lose that game, uh, you're going to take Georgia Tech out of the playoff for losing to Miami in the conference championship. And then, by the way, Virginia does not play Georgia Tech. So they could run the table as well, and then they could sneak into the playoffs. You have multiple teams that could like run the table in the ACC just because they don't play each other.
Hmm.
It's going to be very fascinating to watch. So that's why another reason this game is so big. But that's really all I have to say about this game specifically. The 11 o'clock window is going to be really all the windows are going to be good this week, kind of like last week. But going through just one last time, I guess I will briefly mention the Texas Tech versus Arizona State game. Too bad that we don't know about the health of Sam Levitt.
Yeah, I was going to say if he's back, then hey, that could be a very interesting game. If not, I mean,
Then probably not. But here's
yeah,
the deal. I think I just saw that he's probable. Arizona State, they got to win out. They lost last week. It's too bad that Sam Levitt wasn't playing. Would have liked to have seen him against Utah. So now Arizona State has to try to go win the Big 12. The only way you're going to do that is now to win the rest of your games in the Big 12. That is fascinating. I think Tech's on another level, though. Like, I think they're just a legit top 10 team. So I would expect Tech to take care of business, but wouldn't shock me if there's some crazy upset there.
yeah. Big 12 always has some crazy upset at some point in the year. It's kind of funny to me, like how fast, and I think you have to get what's that guy's name, Jimmy? What's the Texas Tech's head coach's name? I forgot. I always forget his name, but I think you have to give some credit to him because in the NIL world, I think he had like compared to all the other Big 12 coaches, I think he's got Texas Tech like on a different level, like you were just saying. And who knows, maybe by this time next year, he can maybe even have them at like SEC or Big Ten caliber potentially. He's got several 5 stars coming in this next year, and maybe say 3 years or another year or two. But man, um,
Joey McGuire is his
yeah,
name.
Joey McGuire. That's right. Okay, Joey
Yeah.
McGuire. Yeah, the crazy tortilla throwers in Lubbock. Anyway, I think you got to give him credit for what he's been able to do at Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech is kind of like maybe a sleeping giant in a sense because I think if you get the right coach, they can be a really good team just because they're in Texas, they're in West Texas. It's a little off than regular Texas. They got a lot of oil money over there, which what's this? What's college football going to now? Money. So um, anyway, yeah, I think that could be a good game. It's yeah.
Okay, well, I think that pretty much wraps that up. Is there anything you want to say about Texas, Kentucky?
Oh, not really, man. You always have to respect Kentucky just because I think Mark Stoops is a really good coach, and I always respect what he has done for Kentucky because whatever, regardless of their record, they're not necessarily a bad team per se. Their defense is always consistently very good. Offense is a different question, but yeah, I'd be very surprised if Kentucky were able to or were going to give us issues in this game. Not to say that hey, we're over our offensive slumps by any means, but I think we had a wake up call against Florida and defensively woke us up and made us, you know, really hungry and got the best out of us. I think our offense, I think last week, what we were able to do on a top tier defense, especially in a rivalry game full of emotion, as long as we can somewhat emulate that game into this week, which I think we can, I think our offense will be just fine. I'll be interested to see how Arch Manning does because he actually started to get a rhythm and he played very well. So anyway, he doesn't need to do too much. I just hope we are able to have a good, consistent run game. But yeah, I don't really expect too much from it.
Okay, well, I think that pretty much wraps things up. I'm really looking forward to the weekend. And yeah, we'll be back next week to talk about it. Caleb, I'll see you next time.
All right. See you.